Welcome to the Nord Show, a podcast about all things movies and games, where we sit down with some influencers to discuss and get their takes, sometimes hot, on their favorite movies and games. I am your host, Joe Aragon. You may know me from TikTok as Cinema Joe, and I am joined today by Wes, also known as Dungeon Master Wes, or WesIRL on Twitter. We'll be chatting about their experience creating content, cosplay, Dungeons and Dragons, some of their favorite movies, and if we have time, answering some questions at the end from the community. Wes, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Joe.
Of course. I'm really excited to talk to you for a number of reasons. One, we're talking about one of my all-time favorite movies, which is, spoiler alert, we'll get there later. And I've never had a really chance to talk to anybody who's really into cosplay, and it's a world really? I've always been interested in, so I'm really excited to dive into that. So, but before we dive into the episode, make sure to follow us on Spotify, leave us a 5-star review on Apple, drop a review with some a movie you'd like us to cover in the future, and of course, subscribe to NordVPN on YouTube. All right, Wes, gaming content creator, cosplay enthusiast, Dungeons and Dragons master. Easy, simple questions to get us started. Why did you start creating online? What gravitated you to make this community that you're building?
Well, originally I started making gaming walkthrough videos for a company in 2010 called Mahalo Video Games. They don't exist anymore, but at the end, there was no way for anybody to watch the videos. At the end of the era of Mahalo Video Games, we had about 30 or 40 employees, each making 60 videos a week.
Whoa.
So even if someone was to try and slog through all those walkthroughs, there was literally no way to watch it all. So that company ended up working at what is now Tiltify, actually, when they, if you know the charity campaign, as a gaming creator or kind of the gaming tech guru for them. So like helping them build their computers, running their tech, and then eventually ending up at Smosh Games, where was able to foster a community, started doing more cosplay, met a lot of really good cosplay friends, and now I'm here. So yeah, that's kind of my journey. Yeah, it's been an interesting journey for sure. And now I do.
So those videos you made in the beginning, were they like Let's Play videos, or they're more like strictly, here's how to get through this dungeon, go turn right, turn left, pick this up? Was it very straightforward?
Sort of. They were more Let's Play videos than anything else, but we were required by our bosses to, at the very beginning of every video, to say, this is an educational video on how to beat this, because they were afraid that the game companies would sue them for posting their gameplay online.
Oh, interesting.
Because this was like the very beginning of gameplay being posted online. We were like one of the first people to do it. In fact, a lot, you see this Call of Duty meme a lot, whereas like boys will be like, I'll buy the door. It's actually my gamer tag in the top of that meme, which
really?
That was one of our first like big videos. It got like when I remember it last time, it was like 9 to 10 million views, because we were the first ones to post a Call of Duty Zombies video from Black Ops way back in the day.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, so what were some of the few games you started with? I'm now really curious to see if I've watched any, because I'm sure I have, considering my extensive history of just watching people beat games instead of me.
Well, for me, I started off doing Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep, which I loved, on the PSP. So it was literally like a PSP recording.
Oh, wow.
And then eventually moving on to like Halo, Reach when it came out, and then Black Ops. So when the first Black Ops came out, that was literally my job. 24/7 was making videos for that game, because we had the one video that got like 9 million views. And so the company was like, oh yeah, all Black Ops videos all the time. Just make those constantly. So it was literally just me slogging through multiplayer matches, hoping that the internet connection was good enough to actually get a good video.
Those were the days.
I know.
Are you still an active Call of Duty player now, or you just moved away from that world completely?
I haven't played Call of Duty in a while. I still enjoy the campaigns. The multiplayer, I guess I'm not as sweaty of a gamer anymore as I used to be. So like some of the Call of Duty lobbies, I'm like, I'll play co-op. It's fine. I played some Warzone with friends. But then I say I'm not a sweaty gamer anymore, but like I've moved on to like Escape from Tarkov.
Wow.
So
it's a different kind of sweaty, so I completely understand.
Yeah, it's a stressful sweaty. It's like Call of Duty is like, oh, you die, you hop into a new game. Tarkov, it's like you die and you lose all your gear and you're I
Yeah.
hate this person with a passion. I'll find you.
I was
Um,
playing Tarkov for about 3 months, like right when it first came out, and I was just, as you said, very stressful, very frustrating to lose everything. And then now I've been wanting to get back into it because I heard they added VoIP to it. So now I'm like
yes,
really interested to get back into it.
it's fantastic. VoIP in the game makes it
Ah.
so much better because you're like walking along like, like I've got a pistol. Like, look, I'm not trying to kill you. I just need to complete this one quest. Please don't murder me, sweaty Chad.
Yeah, yeah.
And, then the guy walks around the corner and like, like level 6 armor and a like face mask helmet. And you're just like, I couldn't do anything to you even if I tried. So why don't we just let me go?
So I think that's my interest is now peaked because of that. So I might be getting back into that hopefully soon. Kind of a good segue to our next question. In terms of building that community, which you've done really a great job at doing, what's the favorite thing that you love about your community? What's the one thing that you've really been able to harness that you love?
So I try and foster a very positive community, and the people that come to my streams, that go to D&D, that watch my videos, they're all just the nicest people ever. They're so supportive of each other in chat. So like whenever somebody's having a bad day, they'll post about it, and then they'll literally like take it to their DMs and chat with each other. And it's so inclusive. Like, we don't push anybody out unless they're, pretty much being a bully.
Mhm.
But other than that, we accept everybody, and it's so nice. In fact, I love telling this story, and this was a couple of years ago, but there's some people that met on my streams, and they became such good friends that they all flew together and took a cruise together as friends.
That's
And
the best feeling.
yeah, some people were from Europe, from different parts of the U.S., New
Wow.
Zealand. It's an amazing feeling to know
Yeah.
that you are a part of creating like lifelong friendships.
Amazing.
And
Yeah.
that stuff I feel like is really important, is to support your community, because without them, you don't have anything.
Yeah.
You don't have you don't have a stream. You don't have that sort of thing. And so I've known a lot of content creators who kind of think that they're above everybody, and I guess I really don't like that mentality. I love to talk to people and to meet people at conventions, and in fact, at VidCon, a lot of my community would go, and VidCon people were like, no, you don't get to go out and walk the floor. You have to wait. We want fans to pay for your time.
Uh-huh.
And I was always like, no, I'm not gonna do that. I'm just
That's
gonna.
good.
And I would literally just be like, okay, I'm gonna hide my badge, and I walk out onto the floor, and go take pictures and hang out with everybody, because
That's great.
I mean, they're everyone's people,
Exactly, yeah.
And there's some really, really cool people in my communities, and I love hanging out with them. And in fact, some of my stream mods are actually my D&D players in my Eat for Initiative campaign.
Got it. It's amazing. That's a really great feeling, and I can confirm, when you have people who start off as strangers build these lifelong friendships because of the community that you essentially helped start, it's a really great feeling.
Yeah,
Now,
it's very rewarding.
D&D is something that's been around for obviously ages.
Yes.
And I feel like I don't play D&D. I used to when I was a little younger, but I don't play much now. But I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's been like almost a resurgence or this revitalization of the game where, I mean, it feels like everybody has come out and said, yeah, we love D&D and we love playing it, and like we're tired of hiding it. And that's kind of been this newfound feeling over the last 5 or 6 years, and just kind of building and building and building to now we're like, yeah, who cares if we play D&D? It's like, we love it. Is that accurate? How would you respond to that?
I mean, obviously there was a big boon because of Critical Role,
Mm-hmm.
becoming this huge show on Twitch, and like kind of blowing everybody away because they're all voice actors. So they're very good at getting into their characters. They're very good at, showing off these amazing voices. And I know Matt Mercer. I've met him a few times, and he's really good friends with some of my friends, and they like constantly will talk about how just good of a person he is. So I think that that's definitely part of it. And, he's a very talented DM. He's brought it, he has been playing D&D since he was a kid as well, and has been a DM the whole time. But I think that one of the biggest reasons why it had this huge resurgence was because of COVID. People still wanted to interact with their friends. They still wanted to be connected to them. So not much else to do. So a lot of people started making D&D campaigns and D&D groups as a way to like electronically hang out with their friends and goof around. And it's such an amazing tool for that, to be able to tell these incredibly in-depth stories with your friends and have this like these connections and feelings to these characters. Because when you play a character, some people have had characters for 6 years. When that character finally dies, it's this huge emotional hit to like everyone in the party. And it's for a lot of people, those for Dungeons and Dragons, it helps them in real life too. So I do LARP as well, live action role play. And I actually did LARP before I did Dungeons and Dragons, and normally it's the other way around.
Yeah.
But it's this incredibly cool feeling to play these characters and do these amazing things, especially when you're stuck in your house in quarantine and you can't barely even go for a run without the fear of COVID or whatever, especially in the very beginning. So yeah, I think that the buildup of Critical Role and shows like that, and the availability of it on Twitch, has really opened the doors for people to be like, oh, this is actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
And
great.
because before it was, realistically, it was Stranger Things. It was a bunch of nerdy kids in the basement, and no one else really saw what it was except for the parents saying, Satan, So
I guess maybe we should back up real quick. How would you, in the most basic way, explain what D&D is? Somebody who's listening to the podcast right now, it's like, I know what D&D is because I've seen Stranger Things, but like, what is it exactly? How would you explain it to somebody who has no idea what it is? That might be a loaded question because I'm sure it's a very complicated game, obviously, but
for sure.
Is there a way you could?
I think so. I think it's an interactive adventure story told by one of your friends where you can make almost any decision you want, but the success or failure of that is just a dice roll. Oh. So if you want to run up and leap off of one of your friends' backs and then like fire an arrow in the air, you can try and do that. Whereas most other games have very strict mechanics. In D&D, it's kind of up to the dungeon master's discretion. Like, could you physically do this? Sure. Yeah. All right. Roll for it. And I think that that's one of the reasons why it's so amazing, is because it leaves you open to be so creative and adventurous within the comfort of your own home, sitting around and playing with friends. And I think that that is one of the biggest draws, especially for me, is because I love being creative. I love creative problem solving. And so as a DM and a player, it's really rewarding to not only see your players do something creative and be able to reward them for it, but vice versa, do something creative as a player and get rewarded for it. And I mean, that's kind of how I would explain it.
What a definition. That's perfect. Yeah. I mean, if I look it up, I would want to read that. That's a great way to sell it too. You got me all excited right now. Like, oh, maybe I should get back into it now.
Look, you really should. I will be a huge proponent of this. Like TTRPGs, storytelling, it brings out a side of people that they don't even know that they have, this creative, inventive, excited side of themselves to jump into a fantasy world and just play.
I think what you said earlier too about how a lot of typical games, whether that be video games or anything else, there's a lot of restrictions to a lot of things. And the fact that there's almost an infinite possibility of ways to approach something in D&D, it's very appealing and very liberating for somebody who wants to be really creative.
It absolutely is. And the rules aren't like strict. As a dungeon master, you'd be like, well, in the rules, it says this thing, but the character's doing it in a creative way. So I'm going to let it happen. It's fine.
Yeah.
Perfect. And that's something that's really cool about it.
All right. Well, catch me at the next D&D game then. I'll be trying to get into it. So this is a good transition. We're talking about high fantasy and adventure. I sent Wes a list of movies like, hey, Wes, here's some movies. Which one do you want to talk about? And I'll be honest, I was like, here are a bunch of fantasy movies. And I half expected, all right, we'll probably talk about Lord of the Rings, or we'll probably talk about something of that nature, which, hey, I love Lord of the Rings. I'm a big fantasy guy. I would have been fine with any of those choices. But no, Wes responds saying, hey, can we talk about The Mummy? And the shock that went through my body, it was visceral. Let me just tell you that, because The Mummy is one of those movies that I've been obsessed with for a very long time. Probably like the ultimate comfort movie, just something you can watch over and over and over again. I just have to know, what drew you to pick The Mummy of all these options you could have chosen?
So I freaking love The Mummy. I love Brendan Fraser. That movie is amazing. Whenever it's like we had a conversation literally the other day before this even came up, before that list came up. It was like, if an alien species were to come to this planet, you could show them one movie. What would it be? And it's like, oh yeah, The Mummy.
Oh,
100% The Mummy. Like, I just showed it to one of my friends like a month and a half ago for the first time. He'd never seen it, and he was like, "Okay, this is incredible." Like, it still holds up to this day. Like, obviously, like some of the CG in like the second movie is, but it's still an enjoyable movie. But the first one is it's so incredible. So much done with practical effects. And everyone is gorgeous in the movie. Every single person in that movie is gorgeous. Yeah. It's just like, this is great. I love this. It's a great mix of action, adventure, drama, horror, and romance. I literally am like, it's quite possibly the closest thing to a perfect movie that I've seen.
Wow.
You should it's so enjoyable.
just take over the podcast. You can talk about Mummy all day.
I know. I could.
You're saying everything that's going through my mind perfectly. I agree 1,000%. The Mummy is as close to perfect as possible for all of those reasons. Do you have, I mean, I don't know if I can even think of it, but I don't know if you have a first memory with the movie. Do you remember what the first time you watched it? Were you a kid? Were you an adult? Was it in the movies? Was it at home on VHS? Do you remember when you first saw it?
My brother went to see it in the theaters. And when you saw the commercial, it showed the Beatles like kind of climbing over somebody and underneath somebody's skin. Ooh. So as a kid, I was like, I saw the Blair Witch Project and I was like, no horror movies, I'm done. I'm like, never again. I'm good. It was Blair Witch Project was the first horror movie I saw. So when I saw the commercial for The Mummy, I was like, oh, it's a horror movie involving like bugs getting under people's skin. So I'm like, good. So it took until it was on video. My brother was like, you really need to watch this. And I went and watched it. And I was like, oh my God, this movie's amazing. Why did I not watch this earlier? This is so good.
To be fair to your young self, the bug scene still gives me like the willies watching it as an adult, because I just finished watching it yesterday for who knows how many times. But every time the bug scene does come up, it still gives me like the creeps, because it is pretty scary still.
One. Yeah, the underarm one, and he has to like flick it out with the switchblade. Yeah, or the butterfly knife. Yeah. Yeah, it's a little creepy to think about, like something crawling under your skin. That's a phobia for a lot of people. And luckily I don't have that phobia, but I was like, when I first watched it, I'm like, oh man, that's gotta hurt. Like, oh, that's gotta suck. It's like,
that's great. Yeah. So do you have a favorite scene? Is there a favorite moment, a favorite scene? Something that, like, when someone says The Mummy, is there a specific moment of the movie you always think of? I know for me, I have one. I'm just curious if there's like a specific moment in the movie you do.
I mean, I have a couple, but the one that immediately comes to mind when you think of The Mummy, the scene, is when O'Connell first runs into the mummy, and the mummy screams at him, and he screams back and then shoots it, then runs off like, yeah, it's fine. I got the skeleton weird thing. Let's go. But yeah, that is like iconic mummy scene right there, where, he just yells, but like no one expected that. So the first time I saw it, was dying laughing.
Yeah, a lot of yelling in the movie. That one was definitely one of those scenes that popped in my brain as well. I think another great scene that really pops in my head a lot is the airplane scene when they're flying through the air, and then Imhotep becomes like this big sand blizzard face that like tries to engulf it. That's a really big one for me as well. That comes up a lot.
That's a fantastic one. I also love when they're on the plane and like he's like whistling to them to check and see how they're doing. And oh god, my brain is blanking.
Oh, I know who you're talking about though. Yeah,
he's just like so happy and excited, like being on the plane. I'm like, that's awesome.
I feel like I didn't notice that until just recently too. Like my most recent rewatch, I was like, oh, I didn't notice how happy he was hanging on the airplane wing.
He's just so excited. Like I'm flying.
You brought up the sequel. Do you like the sequel? I mean, I know the CG can get a little rough, but do you like the sequel?
I actually really do like the sequel.
I do too.
I mean, the third one, not so much, but
it drops off a little bit.
It's fine. But the second one I did very much enjoy, but it still to this day I think has some of the worst CG ever because of The Rock.
Yeah, it's a widely consensus that that moment is pretty notoriously bad.
yeah, you just kind of like we're gonna move past this, but it's fine. It's fine.
I think as a kid, it didn't bother me though. I mean, I had fun watching it still.
Yeah, as a kid, you don't really notice that sort of stuff. But as an adult, like you go back and you watch it, like, yeah, what are you?
Yeah.
What did they do to The Rock? And actually, I have some friends over at Corridor Digital, and they remastered the CG
really?
in that scene. Yeah, it was a really cool video on YouTube. They kind of like take bad CG and then they rework it. So
How'd it look?
It definitely looked a lot better.
Interesting.
Looked more like The Rock.
I need to look that up. That's always been like an interest of mine because obviously it doesn't look great. And you really think about it, people also always kind of default to, well, it was 2000, I think it was 2001. CG wasn't really where it was at. And then I always have to remind people, well, let me remind you, 2001 was also the same year Fellowship of the Ring came out, and we got the Balrog, which looks pretty amazing, I would argue. So I don't know if that is really an excuse. So
I think that was more budgetary constraints at that point. You know, you can do. You know, a lot of people back then were like, VFX, what do we need to throw $200 at it? That's fine. You know, and then that, you know, you get what you pay for, obviously.
Exactly.
But I think the budget went to a lot of other things because the sets and everything were beautiful.
Yes, correct. Movie. Yeah. I mean, as much as we're harping on the CG, the movie is still a lot of fun. There's a lot of great points to it still. Mm-hmm. But speaking of which, did you ever see the remake with Tom Cruise?
I did. I went in with zero expectations, and I was like, well, it's not The Mummy, but I mean, I didn't hate it. It wasn't like, you know, I didn't walk out being like, oh, I got ripped off for this. I was like, yeah, it's a movie. It's a movie.
It's a movie.
You know,
it happened.
Great. I grew up with Tom Cruise, so, you know, like, despite all the chaos in the media and all that sort of stuff, like, as an actor, I still enjoy Tom Cruise in things. Same. But, yeah, I mean, definitely wasn't 1999 Mummy.
Correct. Yeah, that's exactly how I felt as well. It was a movie. It came out. That's all we need. Now, I'm not sure if you were aware, The Mummy was kind of a larger or a smaller part in a larger universe that they were trying to build.
Yes.
They're trying to build this called the Dark World, where they're trying to re-explore the Mummy and the Wolfman, all of those things. Kind of came to an end, crashed to an end because of the failure of this movie. Is there any, I mean, I don't know if this is totally off the cuff and I was just kind of thinking about it.
Yeah, no, you're fine.
Any Universal monster movies that you would love to see redone?
I mean, it's hard because at the same time you're like, yes, they could do something cool with, you know, Frankenstein's monster, like somewhat new. At the same time, it's like when you look back at, you know, things that happened, like The Mummy with Tom Cruise, you kind of are like, I don't know if I want a lot of the creators that would work on it to make it, if that makes sense. It's like it should be something that is cared for more in a sense than just nostalgia. Let's make it as much money as possible. It should be taken care of as more a very creative project. But a lot of people look at remakes or remasters or, you know, just things like that as just a quick way to make money off of nostalgia. And
yes.
I think that's something that I just tend to like to avoid. But I mean, Frankenstein's monster, Dracula, I mean, all kind of the very classics, Swamp Thing, which I don't know if you saw the series Swamp Thing.
I didn't. Was that on HBO or was it on or I haven't seen it, but I remember a lot of people talking about it saying it was great.
Yeah, it was really good. Yeah. They did a fantastic job with the set. I actually got to go see some behind the scenes stuff.
Oh, very cool.
For it. Beautiful set. They did an amazing job with the show. And unfortunately, there was something weird that happened. It like got canceled after 3 episodes and then get brought back. And but really, really cool, really good, really well done. I recommend it.
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple of the graphic novels and I was really into them and I liked them a lot. And I've always heard great things about the show. And then, like you said, yeah, there was some issues that got canceled, but it was one of those things. It was like, oh, canceled too soon. So that's something I would definitely look into for sure. All right, we could probably talk about The Mummy and Universal monsters probably for the next hour. So right now, what we'll do, we'll take a quick break to hear from our sponsors, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about 3 of your fantasy films that you love that isn't The Mummy, though. So we'll be right back. Are you missing out on your favorite shows because it's not available in your region? Trying to keep your private time private? Well, let me introduce you to NordVPN. If you're bored of US Netflix, why not take a spin in the UK? Using NordVPN and a click of a button, you can do just that. No need to travel to Japan for your favorite anime when NordVPN brings it right to you. With 5,000 plus server options, no show is out of your reach. Make sure to use WesIRL's link in the description of the episode to get a great deal on NordVPN and support Wes's channel. All right, Wes. Pretend the mummy doesn't exist, which I know might be difficult because we both love it. If someone says to you, Wes, you're a D&D DM master, you're a fantasy extraordinaire, what are your 3 favorite movies that are fantasy based?
Okay. I mean, I'm going to just leave out Lord of the Rings because, I mean, obviously the 3 Lord of the Rings movies would I would just be like, okay, all 3 Lord of the Rings movies.
Fair.
But so besides Lord of the Rings and besides The Mummy, I really love the movie. Have you seen Stardust?
Yeah, I've seen Stardust.
I really enjoy that movie. You know, it's kind of sappy and silly, but I love it. I think that the characters are great. And it's by the way, it's Charlie Cox is the main character. Yeah. So he also played Daredevil, which I didn't know that until after I saw Daredevil. I'm like, wait.
Yeah.
Let me go back. I need to see this again. Charlie Cox, great actor. I was sad, and I'm getting off topic a little bit, but I was sad to hear that he went to the theater and no one cheered when Charlie Cox came on the stream, onto the screen in Spider-Man, the newest Spider-Man.
No one. Well, did he go like right when it came out, or did he go like a week or 2 after?
I'm not sure exactly when, but he said he went. I think it was like either opening weekend or the first week, and no one cheered for him. I'm like, what is wrong with you? Everyone was cheering in my theater. Like, I know. I can confirm in my theater, it wasn't as loud as the other parts of the movie, but I definitely was like shocked, and I looked to my wife. I was like, oh my God, it's Charlie Cox. There are definitely some people very excited, but that makes me sad. Well, Charlie Cox, if you're listening, we cheered for you. Yes, so. We were excited. I definitely was like, yes! As far as other fantasy movies go, my brain is somehow drawing a blank. I've seen so many different fantasy movies, and that's fine. That's fine.
Here's some that I love. Stardust is a good one. I don't know if you've ever seen, a little older, have you ever seen Willow?
I my friend, I hadn't seen it up until like 2 or 3 years ago, and then my friend showed it to me, and it was great. I loved it.
Fantastic. Yeah. I'm a big fan of Willow. Last year, The Green Knight came out, which was a little bit of a polarizing movie because it's not like a high action. It's a very slow, meditative story about Sir Gawain, the Green Knight, which, you know, if you love slow burn fantasies, highly recommend. But if you're looking for something with a lot of action adventure, not the best bet. The nice thing about fantasy is that it's such a broad genre where you don't have to really focus on knights and dragons, but you could even extend it as far as something like Pan's Labyrinth, which is a Spanish fantasy film by Guillermo del Toro.
Was crazy.
Exactly.
The visuals in that movie were nuts. I mean, Pan's Labyrinth was great. I do love fantasy movies, and that's one of the reasons why I love D&D so much. But I don't know why my brain is like doing one of those things where it's like the spinning wheel. I can't think of a bunch of different fantasy movies besides like Lord of the Rings and Stardust right now.
So there's one very big one that's, I mean, I guess you could classify it as fantasy. Some people do, some people don't. Are you a Harry Potter fan?
Harry Potter, yeah. I did. Okay, so here's the thing. I love the Harry Potter books. I love the movies. It's a difficult thing for me right now because of all the drama surrounding.
Oh, very fair. Very fair.
Surrounding J.K. Rowling. Because I have a lot of friends who are trans, and I will support them no matter what. And because, you know, everybody is valid, and people should be able to be themselves and without fear of like repercussions. It's just, it doesn't, none of that has ever made sense to me in my entire life.
Completely
and I'm just
agree.
like, I'm like, I guess I sorry to make this like weirdly political and everything.
No. I don't think that's weirdly political at all. And I would 100% agree with you. It is definitely sometimes harder to really watch and enjoy when the person that is essentially the creator isn't a person that, well, to be honest, I would agree with you, not a great person at all. So when I watch, it's like it's hard to separate that sometimes. So I completely understand. That being
When
said,
Putin is cheering for you, maybe you've done something wrong.
probably. But I do find myself enjoying the movies a lot.
Yeah.
And like fantasy, like I said, can be as far as you could even consider a lot of the Marvel movies, DC movies, fantasy.
That's very true. Winter Soldier is my favorite.
Winter
Marvel
Soldier,
movie
or like
by far.
Shang-Chi, Aquaman.
Shang-Chi was, yeah. I mean, realistically, the majority of them are great. I haven't seen Morbius, but I have not heard good things. Yeah. Okay.
As somebody who saw it early, yeah, it was. It's okay. It's okay.
It's Marvel Universe, but like the weird stepchild, I guess.
Yeah, it's very. I don't think it even knows where it's at exactly.
Gotcha.
It's still trying to figure out where it's trying to be. That's all of a confusion. Did you ever see the old? I mean, I guess they did do a remake of Clash of the Titans, but there was the old Clash of the Titans where it was like almost like.
I never saw the
motion.
original, and I saw the commercial for the new one, and I was just like, I think I'm okay. I think I'm good on the new ones, but
just okay. The old one's more of like a nostalgic, like, wow, look at this movie, it's so old, and it's kind of fun in that.
That's cool.
That nostalgic lens. And the last thing I'll bring up, I don't know if you're a Percy Jackson fan, but they've already announced they'll be remaking it.
Oh, very cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. So Percy Jackson's a big one too. Well, we can also accept Return of the King, Fellowship of the Ring, and Two Towers as an answer as well.
I mean, look, I could talk about them for like 3 days straight, but just how long it actually takes you to watch the extended editions. But
11 hours or so to finish all three, or something like that. If you had to pick one, if you just had to pick one of the three, is there one that you gravitate more towards?
I really love Return of the King. I think it has some just amazing moments. I feel like every single actor was on top, like at the top of their game during that movie. It blew me away the first time I saw it in theaters. And like, don't get me wrong, I loved the other two movies. But Return of the King just absolutely blew everything out of the water for me. And, there were definitely moments where I'm in the theater just like
tearing up.
This is amazing. It's so good.
Yeah. Definitely a core memory for me as well. Now, as somebody who's not as well-versed in D&D as you, how much like inspiration can I draw from like Lord of the Rings? Or are there even like campaigns that are like, let's just redo a Lord of the Rings like film or campaign? Like, are you allowed to do that type of thing?
Oh yeah, that's one of the things I love about D&D is you can realistically do whatever you want. I've seen people modify the rules of Dungeons and Dragons to do a Star Wars campaign.
Oh, wow.
Or Lord of the Rings, you play as the same characters, and you can do slightly different names if you want. But I've also seen people like, okay, we're going to play a joke on our dungeon master and we're going to come in as a group. And they just submit their characters. It's like, I'm a dwarven barbarian. I'm a, elf ranger, whatever for a halfling, like a halfling bard. And, they just kind of come in and they're like, the DM's like, okay, cool. And then they kind of like look a little closer and like, you're the Lord of the Rings group, aren't you? And they're like, yes, we are.
Yeah.
Yes, we are.
So fun fact is that my last name is actually Aragon, which is one letter off from Aragorn.
But still awesome.
It is the coolest thing about me. I will admit that. When I started my first D&D campaign, I remember I just named my character Aragon, and the DM was like, "Oh, you just inspired by Aragorn?" I'm like, well, yes and no, but it's actually my name. So it is something I use when I do make my D&D characters. I just put my last name since it already has that high fantasy quality to it,
which is awesome. My last name is Johnson.
Hey, I know. Who knows? Famous Johnson who pulled the sword from the stone. It exists.
Who knows?
All right, let's get to our last segment here. We did ask your fans on Twitter to ask you some questions that we might be able to answer. You got a lot of great ones, and I want to start off with something that I'm really interested in that we actually haven't been able to talk about too much, and that's cosplay. The question came, and it asks, if budget materials weren't an issue, what cosplay would you do? This comes from a username Wow Galgwin. Hopefully I didn't pronounce that incorrectly.
Hi, Gwen. If budget wasn't an option, one of the costumes that I really have wanted to do is Nero from Devil May Cry 4.
Oh, nice.
He's the one with the demon arm.
Yeah.
And the only reason that I haven't done it is because that demon arm would cost so much money. Just specifically because I'd want to make it do the lighting up and making sure that the LEDs would work.
Yeah.
When I my version of cosplay is I love to do it like so accurate that I can do photo shoots and people wonder if it's a game, like cutscene, a screenshot. And that's how I love to do things. So like when I did my Winter Soldier, it made me really happy. It'd be like, oh, is this Sebastian Stan like from set? I'm like, yay,
I feel like I've seen your Winter Soldier one now that I'm thinking about it.
I loved that costume so much, but it's weird. I have so many characters that I'm like, I want to do this character, and they all have like a weird arm. The Winter Soldier has got his left arm. Nero with that. There's a couple other characters too.
Amazing.
And then another one is Master Chief.
Wow, really, Master Chief? Interesting.
Because I love Halo. Halo was what got me into being a competitive first-person shooter like gamer. And it's actually how I got one of my first jobs with Mahalo Video Games. It was because I was the best first-person shooter player in the office. So whenever a new first-person shooter game came out, they're like, okay, Wes, here you go. And in fact, we had trophies there. We do games. You could challenge anybody with a trophy at any time during the day for their respective trophy, and you could pick any game in that category. And I consistently beat my friends who picked games that I'd never touched before. Like one of them was the Wii GoldenEye game, and they had been practicing for apparently 2 weeks, and I beat them first time, and I was like, oh, cool, that was fun. And
with or without motion controls?
No, not motion controls. It was an actual controller. But,
okay.
Yeah, I mean, that would have been a little weird,
a little bit tough.
But yeah,
wow. So you're a big LAN party person then? Have you had your share of LAN parties back in the day?
Back in the day, absolutely. We had LAN parties. My brother and I would say that like he's now much better of a shooter player than I am. But back in the day, we were neck and neck. He was long range and I was close range. So we were allowed to play on the same team once.
Wow.
At a LAN party. We played together once. And it was like 2v2 sort of deal.
Yeah.
And we had one death and I think either 75 to 100 kills.
Wow.
And it was like, they were like, no, you're
unfair.
not allowed to play together anymore. It's just no.
A little unfair.
Yeah, it was a little unfair. And that's when we kind of realized like, oh, we might actually be kind of good at this.
Wow. I was never that good. I was okay. But no, I'm selling myself short. I was decent. I mean, I grew up in the Halo 2 heyday, Halo 3 heyday, so I had my stint. I wasn't 7,500 kills with my brother good, but I was decent.
It was that combination of long range and close range. They couldn't get anything done. But for example, I played on 9 sensitivity and my brother played on 1.
Wow.
So we were literally just the opposites of the spectrum.
Wow.
Like that. Competitive Counter-Strike players, the whole deal. But
perfect.
Yeah.
So Nero and Master Chief were no Rick O'Connell? What happened?
I mean, look, here's the thing. That's a costume I'm already working on.
Oh, I was going to say, but you could pull it off.
I've got the hair length right now to do O'Connell. I really want to do O'Connell, and I've been kind of slowly putting together the costume. But that's one that I could like legitimately do now, so that's why I left that one out.
Okay, perfect.
But,
that's fair.
yeah,
that's fair. Hopefully, I didn't
spoil
that for the future.
No,
for anybody.
not at all. I've been talking about doing an O'Connell cosplay for years. So
awesome.
now, I'm like getting back into better shape after post pandemic. Because I mean, I'll admit there was a lot of ice cream in the previous 2 years.
I completely understand.
Ben and Jerry were practically roommates here. But
wait, which flavor though?
Oh, my favorite, brownie batter core.
Ooh, okay. I don't think I've had that one.
It's so good. Okay, so I'm gonna save you right now. Don't try it because it's that good. You'll be like, wait a minute,
That's how you're saving me.
No, yeah, I'm gonna say this. try it. But also, if you don't want to become addicted to Brownie Batter Core, then don't, because it's. I'm gonna stop talking about it because it's so good.
That's fair. Yeah, I'm a big fish food guy. I like fish food a lot. And the Tonight Dough was always a big one I liked a lot.
Delightful.
But yeah, Ben and Jerry, I completely understand that addiction. We're about to turn into a Ben and Jerry podcast if we don't stop right now. So, another question we got from Wizard of Odd: favorite class to play in an RPG? I'm curious to know this as well. I have one. I'm just curious what do you gravitate towards?
So what I gravitate towards, like in Skyrim, like everyone else, I was a stealth archer. But I also mixed in like heavy armor combat. In co-op RPGs where I'm playing like a role, I tend to do what I do in real life, which is like try and protect everybody. So I usually play the tank. So I'm like the one taunting. But if I'm playing like solo, I'll do like DPS, fast dodges.
Got it.
I kind of like try and play kind of every role a little bit. For TTRPGs though, I do typically tend to be like a fighter with magic. So I just joined the show Edge of Legend, and I'm playing a Magus, which is it's like a mage warrior. So front lines fighting with magic, and you can apply your spells to your hits.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good choices. Yeah, I'm usually also a tank. That's because I feel like I die a lot in RPGs, so I'd like to have a lot of health.
Yep.
So if I'm with the group, I'm not the first one to die, and if I'm by myself, at least I'm like living for a little bit longer. And it's usually why I'm a tank. So
yeah, it's the smart way to go, because as I've been doing Elden Ring streams, and people have very quickly figured out that I like to do dumb parkour stuff.
How's that going for you?
I can attribute more than a few deaths to being like, is this a secret area? Let's try and get there. And then
jump off this corner and wrap around this corner.
I love exploring in RPGs. In fact, I accidentally beat Skyrim. If you've played Skyrim.
Yeah.
So, you go on the quest for the Elder Scroll and all that sort of stuff. Well, I was just adventuring out, and I saw an island with a door symbol on it. So I swam my butt out there and was like, okay, cool. And you meet this guy. He starts talking about the Elder Scroll and sends you on this very long quest to find it. I'm like, okay, cool. I found it. I guess I should, I've been playing this game for like 150 hours. I should probably like do the main story. So I walk my butt up to the top of the mountain, talk to the dragon. And he's like, you must go find the Elder Scroll. I'm like, I have one of them. I guess there's another one. Cool. And then the frickin' mark pops over his head again. I'm like, oh, that's weird. Talk to him. You have found the Elder Scroll. I'm like,
Game over. Complete.
It's just like, go fight the final boss. I'm like, all right, fine.
Amazing.
I'll fight the final boss. But yeah.
How are you liking Elden Ring right now? You're halfway through. Have you beat it already?
No, I've not even. I started it 2 days ago.
Okay.
Or a couple days ago, and it's a lot of fun. I was never really big on the Souls games, because they used to be kind of linear, but this is open world. Yes. You have more freedom, and it's a lot less buggy than the other games. Which that was my main issue. The amount of times I've been grabbed like from teleport distance, and then they teleport on top of me and grab me. I'm like, okay, I'm good. But this game, very well made. The environment is gorgeous. Mechanics are great. You have like a bunch of different styles you can do. It's been a blast.
That's great. Yeah, I would say I'm like 3/4 through it, but I think almost the open worldness has kind of pushed me away from it, only because there's just too much. And sometimes I'm like, I just want to do the story mission, but I don't know where it's at. And
that makes sense. Yeah,
I don't want to say I have too much pride to look it up, but I really want to figure out myself. But it's a hard game to kind of figure out on your own sometimes. So if you have that explorer nature about you, like you do, you're going to do great in it. I just sometimes wanted just to get to the next area.
I've made bad decisions in that game. I went to the harder areas first and was like, oh my God, I can barely do anything to this boss. What the heck? And I spent my 90 or so tries fighting this boss at like level 11. And then I come and find out. And after I beat it, I'm like, oh, cool. Oh, I was supposed to be fighting this thing at level 30.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. Thanks.
It's a very common experience you'll have with that game. So I'm sure you'll have a lot of fun with it. So it's just a fun one to watch as well. So it's a good one. Last question. We're gonna go back to D&D. This one's from Nissa Aerith saying, "What's the most rewarding experience as a DM?"
Hi, Nisa. Also, I didn't say it before, but hi, Odd. So as a DM, I do something that's kind of unique to my my campaign, is that I do character memories. So it's a memory from the character's past that I write, and I've had them be anywhere from like 7 or 8 to 35 pages long, where I write a memory that the character has had in the past, but the player doesn't know. So they kind of give me free rein to come up with the stories. And as I tell these stories and connect it with like kind of personality traits that they've experienced or shown through the campaign, like one of my characters, for example, was really obsessed with protecting the bride at their wedding when chaos happened. And so I took that and wrapped it into a memory of why that was the case. And it was because on their own wedding day, the bride became ill and like, it was like very traumatic. So I wrote that story and told it, and just watching my players' faces and reactions, seeing this character that they've been playing come to life even more, has been so rewarding. And another thing is like just seeing my players interact with each other and develop the stories and like kind of bring the story and the campaign to fruition. It's very rewarding as a DM to see the players really get into the world that you've created. Because my entire campaign is homebrew. I'm not running it off of any book. It's also the first campaign I've ever run, which people have been like, you should run a book for your first campaign, Wes, not homebrew. But I'm a madman, so I've written close to 900 pages of backstory and lore now.
Oh, yeah! Wow, that's really impressive.
It's getting a little intense.
But that's a dedication to the craft. That's amazing.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, whenever I open that Word document with the stories and stuff, it's like, I'm like, all right, I'll come back in 5 minutes. It'll take some time to load, but it's been really rewarding to play with my friends and to see their reactions to the world that I'm like working on. It really makes the like hours and hours and hours that you spend writing and working on things worth it. Because it can be stressful. Like you're coming up on the day and it's, if nothing's really knocking around, the engine won't start. And you don't come up with any, but then you like finally do, and seeing their reactions to that it makes it all worth it.
That's because you don't have to actually create all these backstories, correct? Like you're just doing it out of the pleasure that you'll get from your players playing this campaign. Am I right?
I don't have to do it at all. Yeah. But I very much enjoy that. And so some of them are donation goals. So like you can donate to like buy health potions or give people advantage rolls or player hints. So if there's like I do little things because like if an NPC is nearby that could potentially give them a hint for something, the player can then use that to be like, we're stuck, help us, sort of deal. But yeah, it's something that I very much enjoy doing, is doing the writing for these backstories, because I really love to see my characters or my players' faces light up when their character is the one that gets the story that week.
Yeah. Wow. That's really amazing. You have me sitting here just like really excited to maybe get back into this, because the creativity that goes with this is just outrageous in the best possible way.
I highly recommend it. Just grab a group of friends, do some D&D, even if it's casual, like once a month. I highly recommend it. It's so much fun. Perfect. And it really gets those creative juices flowing for like, how do I solve this problem? What do I do? Rather than just like run, smash. It really brings it all together, and you honestly become closer friends with the people you're playing with.
Amazing.
As well.
Amazing. Well, we've reached the end, Wes. There's one last question I have for you. I usually ask somebody, if there's a video game out there, which video game would you like to become a movie or a show? Now, I can ask you that, but I'm also curious to know, Dungeons and Dragons, the movie has been confirmed. It's called Honor Among Thieves, I'm pretty sure it's called. It's the title they've given it. So, one, will you be watching that? And two, is there a video game out there that you would say would translate to a movie that you would love to see on the big screen?
So yes, I will absolutely be watching the Dungeons and Dragons movie. I'm very excited for it. because I know that, like, I know a lot of people, and I've worked with the people at Wizards of the Coast, and they really
okay.
do very much care about their world, their characters, and I don't think that they would let anyone, like, just anybody, take their franchise and turn it into a movie.
Yeah.
They're not like, obviously it's a company that, likes it when you buy their stuff, but they're not a company that's going to sell out and be like, yeah, here's our franchise, go make a movie that makes us money. Like, that's just not Wizards of the Coast. And they're very passionate about their projects and the things that come out.
Yeah. As a big Magic the Gathering player, I love their lore. I love everything they do with their lore.
It's so good. It, like, I also love Magic the Gathering. So,
awesome.
Yeah. I used to play in tournaments. I love drafting.
Me too.
It's my favorite format ever. But as for a movie to be or a game to be turned into a movie, not a lot of people have played it.
Okay.
But it's a really, really cool concept. It was a game on the original Xbox called Breakdown.
Breakdown.
Yeah, you wake up in this kind of like laboratory, and you don't have any memory. You don't know what's going on, but there's like soldiers trying to kill you. And you find out like you're kind of an experiment sort of character. But it was the first game that showed first person hand-to-hand combat fighting. Like,
interesting.
Kicks and jumps, and you could do like slide kicks and uppercuts and stuff. It was really, really cool. And throughout the game, you slowly gain these powers, and you find out about these like interdimensional aliens that have been attacking, sort of deal. I think it would be like an amazing TV show or something, but I've always wanted them to make a sequel or remake that game because it was one of my favorite games back in the day, and no one has ever heard of it.
It's always a good way to revitalize a franchise, make a show, make a movie.
Exactly.
All right. Paramount, Netflix, message Wes, and then he'll give you script ideas.
Look, I'll write you a whole script for that. I will do it. I've got a pile of scripts on my computer.
Awesome.
For stuff.
Perfect.
But yeah.
Well, Wes, I had a great time talking about, feels like almost everything. The Mummy and D&D and Ben & Jerry's. It's been a great time. We'll make sure to link all of your information, social media, your content in the description of the episode. Make sure to check Wes out. And of course, make sure to follow The Nord Show on Spotify and subscribe on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. Wes, again, thank you so much for being here. We had a really great time.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having me, Joe.
Of course. Everybody else, take care.